In the sweltering heat of July 1518, a woman named Frau Trophäa stepped onto a narrow cobblestone street in Strasbourg and began to dance. There was no music playing in the town square, no celebration underway, and no clear motive for her sudden movement. Yet her feet moved with relentless, violent cadence, ignoring the friction of stone and the agony of exhaustion. Days passed, but she did not stop. Her posture twisted in rhythm to an unheard melody, her shoes soaked in blood as her feet bruised and tore. Friends and family attempted to intervene, pleading with her to rest, but her expression remained vacant, locked in an unreadable trance. Exhaustion tore at her frame, yet her muscles continued to twitch and surge with unnatural momentum. The phenomenon was not a fleeting moment of madness, but the opening chapter of a historical enigma. Within a single week, 30 individuals had joined Frau Trophäa in the streets, compelled by the same inexplicable urge to dance. By August, local chronicles estimated that the crowd had swollen to several hundred citizens, moving continuously under the summer sun. Men, women, and children collapsed from pure physical depletion, yet those who remained standing continued their frenzied movements until stroke, heart attack, or sheer muscular breakdown claimed their lives. The event was recorded not in legend, but in meticulously maintained primary sources preserved in public archives. Municipal registers, cathedral sermons, local chronicle entries, and regional physician notes documented the day-by-day escalation of the crisis. These records from Strasbourg, then a free city within the Holy Roman Empire, provide unmistakable evidence that the outbreak was a genuine public health emergency that paralyzed urban life. Confronted by an unprecedented catastrophe, the Strasbourg City Council summoned local physicians to diagnose the affliction. Rejecting astrological or supernatural causes, the medical authorities declared the condition to be a natural illness caused by hot blood. Their prescribed cure, however, defied modern logic. Believing that the victims had to dance the sickness out of their systems, city leadership actively encouraged the continuation of the movement. Civic leaders authorized the construction of a large wooden stage in the grain market and hired professional musicians to play pipes and drums continuously. Guild members were paid to support falling dancers and keep the crowd moving, transforming the center of Strasbourg into an open-air chamber of horrors. Instead of purging the affliction, the music and public setting acted as a catalyst, accelerating the spread of the compulsion to dozens more onlookers. Recognizing the disastrous failure of their physical remedy, the authorities abruptly reversed course. Realizing that the spectacle was fueling the crisis, the council banned all public dancing and music throughout the city. Dancers were bound, placed into wagons, and transported miles away to the shrine of St. Vitus in the Vosges Mountains. There, priests placed red shoes upon their bleeding feet and sprinkled them with holy water, seeking divine intervention. To comprehend why such a phenomenon took hold, one must examine the socio-economic landscape of the Holy Roman Empire during the early 16th century. The region surrounding Strasbourg was enduring severe structural hardship, plagued by successive crop failures, severe famine, and rampant disease outbreaks like syphilis and smallpox. The populace lived under constant threat of starvation, creating an environment of acute existential dread and psychological vulnerability. Modern epidemiological research has sought to isolate potential biological agents capable of causing such widespread, involuntary physical movement. For decades, one prominent scientific theory pointed toward ergotism, a toxic neurological condition caused by consuming rye grain infected with the fungus Claviceps purpurea. Ergot alkaloids contain compound structures chemically related to lysergic acid diethylamide, capable of inducing vivid hallucinations, muscle spasms, and severe vascular constriction. While ergotism can produce powerful involuntary spasms and visual disturbances, toxicological analysis casts serious doubt on this explanation for the Strasbourg outbreak. Ergot poisoning typically restricts blood flow to the extremities, leading to gangrene, severe bodily pain, and a complete loss of coordination. It is biologically improbable that hundreds of individuals suffering from acute ergot poisoning could maintain coordinated rhythmic dancing for days at a time without collapsing immediately from physical incapacitation. With toxicological causes largely discounted, contemporary scholars turned toward the psychological dimension of human crisis. The prevailing scientific consensus now frames the Strasbourg outbreak as an extraordinary manifestation of mass psychogenic illness. This psychological phenomenon occurs when intense collective stress, fear, and shared cultural expectations manifest as real physical neurological symptoms across a cohesive group of individuals without any identifiable chemical or organic pathogen. Under extreme hardship, the human nervous system can cross a critical physiological threshold where psychological trauma converts into involuntary motor activity. When individuals are exposed to prolonged fear and severe caloric deficit, the brain becomes highly susceptible to subconscious suggestion. In an era when sudden behavioral shifts were understood through spiritual lenses, the mind translated unbearable psychological pressure into physical movement that mirrored prevailing cultural fears. Central to this psychological contagion was the deep-seated belief in Saint Vitus, an early Christian martyr whom medieval tradition believed held the power to curse sinners with uncontrollable dancing. In the region surrounding Strasbourg, fear of Saint Vitus was widespread and deeply internalized. Historians argue that when Frau Trophäa began her compulsive movements, observers interpreted her actions through this specific cultural framework, inadvertently triggering a widespread psychogenic response driven by terrifying expectation. As noted by historian Dr. John Waller in his extensive studies of the event, mass psychogenic outbreaks require both a heightened state of environmental stress and a strong shared belief system. The populace of Strasbourg possessed both in abundance. The combination of devastating famine, looming epidemic disease, and religious angst created a psychological pressure cooker where subconscious mental distress sought release through the culturally recognized medium of the dance curse. This dynamic reveals a startling paradox in human neurobiology, where cultural belief actively shapes the physiological expression of illness. The mind does not merely perceive danger, it physically constructs symptoms based on what it expects to occur. In 1518, the dancing was not an act of joy or deliberate religious trance, but an involuntary, stress-induced physical discharge that victims were completely powerless to suppress until their bodies gave way. The events in Strasbourg were not an isolated historical anomaly. Archival records document earlier outbreaks of compulsive dancing throughout medieval Europe, including notable incidents in Aachen in 1374 and along the Rhine River Valley in 1278. These historical precedents consistently co-occurred with periods of acute environmental strain, flooding, famine, and widespread pestilence, reinforcing the link between severe societal trauma and collective psychogenic breakdown. Primary accounts from the 1374 outbreak in Aachen describe thousands of people dancing in a state of altered consciousness, screaming of visions and demoniacal control. Dancers reported feeling as if they were submerged in a stream of blood, unable to stop their frantic leaps until their abdomens were bound tightly with cloth. The striking similarities between these dispersed events highlight a recurring pattern of collective neurological response during medieval crises. In evaluating these historical records, modern researchers must carefully distinguish documented factual evidence from later artistic exaggerations and sensationalized folklore. While popular narratives often depict entire towns dancing uncontrollably for months without end, critical historical analysis demonstrates that the Strasbourg crisis was bounded in time and space, lasting approximately 2 months before waning as victims received care at religious shrines. Contemporary medical science classifies such events under the umbrella of functional neurological disorder, a condition where the nervous system experiences structural integrity but functional impairment in sending and receiving signals. In instances of collective stress, functional neurological symptoms can spread rapidly through social modeling, as visual observation of an affected individual triggers subconscious replication in susceptible observers who share the same psychological strain. The primary archival evidence from 1518 serves as a striking case study in the power of social contagion over human physiology. It demonstrates that under precise conditions of collective dread, the subconscious mind can override basic autonomic safeguards, driving the body far past the normal limits of physical endurance. The dancing plague was not a fiction born of superstition, but a documented biological breakdown induced by societal panic. Yet key questions remain regarding why certain individuals succumbed while others in identical circumstances remained unaffected. Archival records offer limited detail on the specific demographics or underlying health conditions of individual dancers beyond a few prominent cases. Why did Frau Trophea's isolated breakdown ignite a widespread crisis, while thousands of other suffering citizens in neighboring towns witnessed similar stresses without developing motor conversion symptoms? The resolution of the 1518 outbreak marked a turning point in early modern understandings of public health and psychological disruption. As the summer faded into autumn, the combination of shrine pilgrimages, quiet rest, and improved civic organization helped calm the widespread terror. The city gradually restored order, leaving behind a wealth of legal and medical documentation that would intrigue scholars for centuries to come. Modern historians and epidemiologists continue to analyze the Strasbourg chronicles to better understand the boundaries of psychogenic illness in contemporary societies. While medieval culture expressed extreme collective stress through religious curses and involuntary dance, modern populations express similar stress through distinct psychogenic phenomena suited to contemporary technological and social environments. The fundamental neurological mechanics, however, remain remarkably consistent across human history. The historical evidence for the dancing plague of 1518 challenges our understanding of the divide between mental perception and physical reality. It reminds us that human biology is not isolated from culture, belief, and environment, but deeply intertwined with them. Under sufficient pressure, the boundaries of self-control can dissolve, revealing the profound susceptibility of the human body to the overwhelming currents of collective fear. As researchers uncover more records from early modern Europe, the tragedy of Strasbourg continues to invite rigorous multidisciplinary inquiry. Was there a forgotten environmental factor that interacted with psychological stress? Or was the human mind entirely responsible for driving hundreds of bodies to physical collapse? The precise interplay of biology and culture in 1518 remains one of historical epidemiology's most fascinating open inquiries. 5 centuries after Frau Trophea stepped into that Strasbourg street, the echoes of her steps linger in the archives of history. The dancing plague stands as a compelling testament to the mind's ability to command the flesh in ways science is only beginning to fully comprehend. In the quiet pages of medieval records lies a profound lesson about the fragility of human composure when pushed to the absolute edge of endurance.